Hi, and welcome back to my channel. I am Paige Elizabeth, mindset and wellness coach, author, speaker. Today I want to talk about something that is just so critical, and I think that a lot of women are kind of like missing the mark. I know I was, and that's fat. Fat is a very critical macronutrient, especially as we get older. So listen up. See, most of us were taught that like eating fat made you fat, but here's the irony. Eating fat is what signals to the body it's okay to partition your stored fat for fuel. Our HPA axis, which stands for hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, is actually the gatekeeper and what signals to the body how to operate metabolically, right? So this is actually going to be the system that we need to work with when it comes to maintaining weight loss or just maintaining our weight in general. See, if you have a lot of fat to partition, right? Let's say that you're at least 20 pounds or more overweight. You can really do any kind of diet and the body's going to be like, yeah, we have plenty to give up. Because ironically, the body wants to maintain homeostasis. And so with that homeostasis, it's like, we don't need this excess. Let's give it up, no problem. But when you get down to a certain point, the body's like, but what if there's a famine? But what if we get stuck in prison? Like it tends to harbor and hold on to those fat storages, especially for women, because our bodies are designed for safety and ultimately for reproduction. And trust me, I've heard the arguments, and I am the first one to say, yes, I agree with you. I have one client in specific who can do a 30-day water fast. 30 days water fasting. And her hormones actually regulate, her periods will get normal, she loses a ton of weight, she feels amazing, right? But she's also about 80 pounds overweight. And so for her body's like, yes, let's liberate ourselves. We got so much to give up, right? But the thing is, once you get leaner, the game changes quite drastically. And I would say it's usually like below 30% body fat. Once you get below 30%, your body's not going to be as kind when you decide to play those kind of games. Not to say that fasting's a game, but like you have to be more sensitive to the nervous system activity when you're at a lower body fat percentage than you do when you're at a higher body fat percentage. And this is where fat becomes a critical player, because in order for women's bodies to partition its own fat for fuel, the brain needs to know that there's enough coming in to where it can release that. Because if the brain is not getting the signal that fuel is coming in, it will work against you, especially initially. And not to say that you can't ultimately just lose weight if you go on a starvation diet. You will, but it's also going to cost you lean mass and a lot of energy. So when women over a certain age are like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to lose weight, but nothing is budging. I'm actually more swollen. I actually feel puffier. Yes, that is real. That is not in your head. That is cortisol saying, hey, pump the brakes because we're not getting what we need. And cortisol throws up a flag. It interferes with insulin. You hoard water weight instead because the body feels like that deficit that you're in is stress. It's a threat. It doesn't want to give up the resources it has. So eating fat doesn't just train your mitochondria, right? Your cellular engine to oxidize fat efficiently. It actually helps to blunt blood sugar spikes, right? It's actually more satisfying than even protein because it's slow burning, right? So it takes longer to actually digest it. I know it sounds crazy because we've been sold this whole thing about protein. And I'm not saying protein is wrong, but protein paired with fat, now you're going to be feeling more satisfied when you eat. So protein is essential for building tissue, for building good, solid, lean mass, all right? But it's not very efficient for energy. Can it be used for energy? Absolutely. The body can break down protein and use that as a fuel source, but it's the least efficient. And so we want to make sure our body's getting the energy that it prefers, which would be carbs and fat, so that way as we're leaning out, we're not actually having to rely on excessive protein and tapping into our lean mass. Now, the difference between carbohydrates and fat is that carbs are quick fuel, but fat is a safety fuel. Fat signals to the brain, we're okay, we're safe. And in order for the nervous system to work with you, it has to feel safe. So carbs are excellent when you're going to work out, when you're actually going to pump, when you're going to go for a run. Like they're excellent to time around those types of activities. But ultimately, if you want the scale to change and your body composition to shift, you have to make sure you're eating enough fat. Now, I was surprised when I talked to my doctor and he was like, double it, right? When we muscle tested, it actually came back at least 90 grams per day. I'm 5'3", 124 pounds. 90 grams of fat is where my body wanted me to be consuming daily to start regularly leaning out. And you know what? When I just took his advice and started doing that, I was kind of shocked. Actually, I started leaning up very quickly. Not that I'm heavy, but when you're trying to lose that last layer of fat, it feels like a fight, right? And did you know that fat is the only nutrient, macronutrient, that doesn't require insulin? So carbohydrates require insulin for processing, but so does protein. Fat is the only thing that doesn't actually require insulin. And so it tends to actually help keep it quiet and at bay, which is essential if you're trying to manage blood sugar spikes, if you're trying to partition more of that body fat. And so we do love carbs. We want to have them in our diet, and they're amazing for, like I said, quick fuel, great for the muscles, right? Like as we're working out, our muscles just soak up those carbohydrates. But if we really want to make sure the entire system feels safe, regulated, and in the appropriate gear to partition that body fat, we do need to make sure that we're getting adequate fat. If you've ever experienced a deficit and you're like, okay, why all of a sudden am I wired tired? Or maybe you're like me, maybe you just flatline. Like the second I go into a deficit, my body's like, oh, she's doing this again, right? And it just powers down, and all of a sudden you're like, why am I tired? And why am I not actually getting the results, right? Well, fat's the solution. Fat tells the body, you don't have to power down because I'm giving you the fuel that you need so that you can actually keep going and feel safe. And because you're getting less calories in the system, it can actually partition more of that fat from the system. So like I said, I know it seems like counterintuitive, but it's actually what the body needs to feel safe so that it can actually step forward and work with you. Otherwise, if you just rely on protein and carbs and not enough fat, you could be doing yourself quite a disservice. And look, most men in the fitness world will tell you that fat is the least important. And for men, that's the case. Like for men, fat is not an important macronutrient because they have very different hormonal systems that they're working with. So just to recap, for quick, intense energy, carbohydrates, absolutely. To build muscle mass, protein all day long. But to feel safe and regulated and able to show up and continue to actually move through your deficit, fat. Fat is going to be the thing that actually speaks to the body and says we're good. We can keep going. It's great for blood sugar levels. It keeps insulin at bay. It's great for the brain. It's great for your hormones. And it also helps with inflammation. So years ago, I used to publish a magazine. I used to publish a pole dancing magazine, and I worked with some incredibly amazing and beautiful talent. And I don't know why this didn't sink in and just stay sunk in, but I do remember very specifically having a conversation with this woman who, in my opinion, was just the epitome of everything that was masculine and feminine in one. Like this woman was incredible, and she had just this beautiful body, so lean, so muscular, but it was just perfect in my eyes, right? And I said to her, how do you stay so lean? And she said to me, I'll never forget, she goes, I eat a ton of fat. I eat a ton of fat. She wasn't like, oh, I eat all this protein. She was like, no, I eat a lot of fat. So try it. You have nothing to lose but the fat, right? Again, if you're way overweight, anything's gonna work because your body's like, yes, let's do this. But then as you get closer to your goal, fat is gonna be the key to leaning out and actually getting where you want to be. Again, my name is Paige Elizabeth. I'm a mindset coach. I help women with nervous system regulation. Like, share, and follow for more.